Hello, everyone. My name is Sejan Stephen Park, and I'm the Assistant Library Administrator for Adult and Digital Services with LA County Library, and I welcome you all to Spotting Misinformation Online. All right, now that's out of the way, we can get on to today's event. This program is supported in part and in whole by the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provisions of the Library Services and Technology Act, administered in California by the State Librarian. And today, I'm happy to introduce our presenter, Connor Johnson. Connor Johnson is our MakeMo or MakeMo Mobile librarian, which means he drives a colorful van all around LA County doing STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math programs for anyone, all ages. And on any given day, you can find him at locations in schools, parks, senior centers, libraries, and many more other locations. And today, he's here with us to share virtually spotting misinformation online. Welcome and thank you, Connor. Please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And hello, everybody. My name is Connor, and we'll just get right into today's topic, which is spotting misinformation online. So we all know that online information isn't always accurate or helpful. Today, we're going to go ahead and learn about the consequences of misinformation, how misinformation spreads, and how we can investigate and identify fake or misleading information from articles, videos, images, and other media. So a really important topic in today's age. So when we're talking about misinformation, what do we mean? So we're talking about incorrect or misleading information. Misinformation can also include disinformation, with the difference being disinformation is different because it's deliberately deceptive. So misinformation isn't always necessarily disinformation. There's a difference there with the motive behind it. So an example of misinformation would be circulating an untrue rumor, while disinformation would include things like presenting something that's blatantly false as a fact, such as the earth is flat. There's all different kinds of misinformation out there, and we'll go over these. Some of those categories are satire, false context, imposter content, fabricated content, and manipulated content. So some differences and similarities between those. So first up, we'll go over satire. So satire is using humor, exaggeration, or parody to mock something. And since it's usually meant as humor, it's not expected to be taken seriously. But just because something isn't meant to be taken seriously doesn't mean that it can't be taken seriously by those that aren't aware. An example of satire on the internet is The Onion. So The Onion is a newspaper that regularly publishes outrageous headlines. And the serious method of their reporting has fooled people, including leaders and politicians, into citing their articles as fact. And an example of an Onion article and the headline we see on the screen to the right about football says NFL satisfies outraged fans with new overtime rule that both teams win. So you know that's not a truthful headline. It's satirical. You know, it's meant to satirize and mock, you know, the aspect of sporting. Another category is false context. So that takes a piece of content and puts it into a new false content context and meaning. So an example on the screen, we see a video. It's a screenshot from a video saying breaking, Kenya electric bus catches fire along Karen Road. This was posted to Twitter. Twitter users pretty quickly figured out that it was an incorrect headline. The bus fire depicted happened in Italy, and the bus was running on gasoline. So it wasn't an electric bus, and the location was misattributed. So another aspect, another category of misinformation can be imposter content. So this is uses a well-known name or brand to fool others into believing the content is authentic. And the example for this type of misinformation is the newspaper we see on the screen, the Washington Post. Unprecedented. Trump hastily departs White House, ending crisis. That's not a true, that's not a real Washington Post newspaper at all. It was distributed in 2019 by tens of thousands, leading people to believe this headline was true. It was actually misinformation, or in this case, disinformation, put out there by an activist group. Next, we have fabricated content. So this is when something is entirely made up with no basis in reality. The headlines are often sensationalist, and the photos shown are unrelated. So in this example, we see the headline is "Bodies Found in Satanic Dungeon in Chuck E. Cheese Basement." Again, this was reported by several news sites as fact before it was debunked. We see this with clickbait all the time. If we've heard that term, getting people to click on things, whether the headline is true or not. Another aspect of misinformation that we see online is manipulated content. So manipulated content is making changes in the original material to deceive or put into a false context. So this can be one of the hardest to separate truth from fiction. It's becoming ever more common for Photoshop, and photo editing software is more accessible, which is great for users and for accessibility. But the false images and the way that they can be faked or edited, is getting to a level that it's really difficult to tell the difference. So in this example, the photo that we see on the screen, it purports to show Putin grabbing Obama's necktie. However, this was an edit from an actual photo that we're going to see in a second. So the real photo is on the right, and it would be really difficult for the average person to see or notice that the modifications were put in place. We've seen, with AI in the news lately also, that images are becoming available just by a text prompt. A recent example of that, if any of us saw, the Pope in a puffy jacket. You can Google it if you haven't seen that. But there can be harmless deep fakes, fake images, fake videos, but sometimes there are consequences, and we have to ask ourselves, is what we're seeing a truthful reflection of reality? And I mean, why is misinformation a problem? It's a big problem. It can be weaponized to influence public opinions and hide the truth. So propaganda is a prime example of misinformation. For example, what we see on the screen, Hitler and Nazi Germany. So Hitler and his staff were excellent at utilizing propaganda to create falsehoods and promote Hitler's agenda. So the picture that we see casts the Jews as the shadow enemy behind Germany's real enemies in World War II. So this can be very insidious. And why is it a problem? It's also a problem because there is a lack of digital literacy. That's why we do these programs. It's people aren't always aware of what can be done, both technologically speaking, again, especially now in the age of AI, and how simple it is to edit images, and more it's getting easier to edit videos. And misinformation is actually a lot more spreadable than true statements. It's exciting. It can be sensationalistic. False information spreads 70% faster than true. This was a study on tweets, that false tweets, false information was 70% more likely to be spread than true tweets. And this increases in volume during key political events like presidential elections and the like. And since misinformation can be spread to promote radicalism, it's important to be able to distinguish what's true and what's accurate. I mean, how is misinformation spread? So, historically, it's been through word of mouth and printing. I mean, pretty much any form of human communication is susceptible to misinformation. Um, with word of mouth and oral tradition, gossip, and then, printing, on books and pamphlets, and now with the advent of internet communication and digital communication, it's possible to reach a larger audience than ever before with relatively little effort. Social media has become one of the widest spreaders of misinformation. One of the big deals from a few years back was the Cambridge Analytica scandal. If you don't know what that is, you can look that up. I just want to mention that it was spread. So I'm seeing that I might be frozen. Let me open the chat and see if anybody could tell me whether it's frozen or not. Oh, you got put it too. So if you can't see or hear me, please bear with me because I think I'm getting some information that
Hi, Connor. Sorry about that. I can
Sure.
see you back online.
Okay, am I back?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was on my end.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Okay,
All
I
right, so
apologize.
that's fine. That's fine. So sorry about that. We'll just keep continuing. Um, okay, so I was mentioning the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That's a way of illustrating how algorithms behind social media influence and push certain content. So that it's an interesting way that technology has been used to continue the spread of misinformation. I recommend looking into it if that's something that is interesting or piques your interest. And just for me personally, I remember the first time I ever was really taught about online was it was back in the 90s. The internet was just coming around, and getting access to it, and it was my elementary school librarian actually talked to us about it's important, when you go online to do research that you're not finding an essay posted by, another sixth grader, a fellow sixth grader, because that's obviously going to have, different accuracy and depth than an actual essay written by a professional. And I think back on that, and that just seems, so innocent back then. That's what we'd have to worry about, because now there's bad faith actors that are deliberately putting out disinformation. So it's something it's an important topic, and so it's important to be aware of these things. So let's take a look at some examples of misinformation over the years. Back in 1835, there was the Great Moon Hoax. So that was a series of 6 articles published in The Sun, a New York newspaper. It was about the supposed discovery of life on the moon, even civilization. This was falsely attributed to an actual prominent astronomer of the time. As a result, the sun's circulations skyrocketed, and because of this hoax, it was established as a successful paper. So kind of not the reaction that we would want. And another big example that's more well known is the 1948 Chicago Tribune accidentally published that Dewey defeats Truman. And obviously that was retracted, and it was a mistake, but it happens, and it's something to keep in mind. And then, more recently, we see online a lot of the paid content, on reputable websites. It might be near the bottom, sometimes called clickbait. Doctors recommend or doctors hate it. So this is often linking to unscrupulous sources. These are all headlines, trying to get us to click on them, but it might not have, accurate information. And then a final example of just from last year. This is a screenshot we're seeing of a video purported to be of a mermaid found off the Kenyan coast. And looking at the video and looking at it more closely, it's pretty clear that the mermaid's body on top was digitally inserted. So again, with these deep fake images and videos, we can ask, are they more or less harmless, just for fun? Are there actual consequences? As this technology progresses, it's more and more important to be aware that it's a concern. So how can we go about spotting misinformation? So 3 things we really want to look at whenever we're reading or seeing anything online is to ask ourselves the source, the information itself, and the motive behind that article or the image, whatever it is that we're viewing. So the source of information, such as the author or organizer or organization, is important to research because it can tell us whether they've been accused of putting out misinformation in the past. Have they written other articles that can be characterized as misinformation? People who have a long history of being cited by others or writing for relatively reliable organizations, such as a large newspaper or journal, are probably more likely to be more credible than a relative unknown. Again, anybody can post anything online, and especially in relative anonymity. So, whose opinions and facts are you reading? Are they opinions or are they facts? And the next step that we can do is to research the information that we actually find. So we can verify things like simple facts. What is the article saying, and is the information contained within the article, are these things that we can actually verify? Yep, okay, that's true, that happened. If we start to see some contrasting or if there's little white lies within the article, well, why? Or even if it might not be outright lies, but it might not be the context of the situation. So that's really important. Context is everything. And you should, I apologize. It can be very difficult to verify images and videos to make sure they're not doctored, but I'll give you some resources at the end that we can use to try and suss out whether those are real or not. And finally, the third step that we can do to spot misinformation online is to research the motive. Why is this being shared? What's the goal? Does the source have a political leaning, and who's going to benefit? What are they trying to accomplish with this information? As you're reading it or looking at it, is it designed to convey objective facts, or is it trying to promote an emotional reaction? Which is all things we need to think of because there are consequences. And something that's really important is to watch out for is being in a misinformation bubble. It's also known as an echo chamber. If you're getting everything from the same source or the same social media site, expand your horizons a little bit. Go outside your comfort zone and read something or look at something from a different aspect or a different political leaning than you're used to. It can only verify or confirm, what we're seeing. And we're going to have some, again, sources to help us with that. In just a few minutes, I'll share those with you. But getting a more holistic view on any topic, again, even if you don't share that specific belief or that political leaning, is going to make it easier for you to spot misinformation. So All Sides is one of those really great resources for getting different opinions on big news topics. They provide articles on the same topic by different publications that have different political views. So you can see, like, maybe there is a truth and accurate facts are being reported, but maybe then the nugget of truth is going to be presented different ways depending on the source. So factcheck.org is also a really good resource. It's a nonprofit website that's designed to reduce the level of deception and confusion in US politics. And Hoaxy, I also have Hoaxy on here right now. It's down due to some of the technological changes at Twitter right now. But I kept it up here in hopes that Hoaxy will be back, or something similar to it. But Hoaxy is or was a tool for tracking tweets that can trace the source of a tweet and see if it originates from an account that's known for spreading misinformation, or is it more of a verified account, and it can cite its sources. So really important, anybody can share anything. So what you're seeing on the screen, that's a screenshot from Hoaxy showing how a tweet originated. So again, it's down right now, but I'm hoping it either comes back, or at least we can be aware that there are tools like this to help us, because it's really not possible to be aware of everything and do so much research on everything. We can use all the tools we can to help us. So some more fact-checking resources. Google Fact Checker, really easy to use Google Fact Checker to try to figure out what the accuracy of an article or a statement is. InVid Chrome extension, it's a mini app for the Chrome browser. It integrates a misinformation filter for videos and images. So again, these are some of the ones that are harder for us to figure out, unless you're a technological Photoshopper, or you're good at that kind of tech aspect. And I'm not. I can't always tell when something is faked. It's going to help you figure out whether something is originated from a trustworthy site or not, to help you figure out if it's legitimate. And finally, another really cool tool is the Wayback Machine. So if you haven't heard of that, that's a way to look back at past previous iterations of websites and web pages. So even if that content is no longer online currently, a lot of previous iterations of websites and web pages have been archived by the Wayback Machine, and you can search that to try and figure out verify potential information, even if it's no longer currently online. So we've talked about misinformation and disinformation, all kinds of misinformation, things that are deceptive, or things that are just accidentally, or rumors, or hearsay that's being spread. It affects us, because we all form our worldview based on what we know and believe. So, being on the same page with objective facts is really important for us to have dialogue. You have been given some resources to help spot misinformation. And as technology progresses, and deep fakes and videos and photos become harder to verify, the tools that we have to help us figure out what's legitimate or not, will progress as well. So it's important for us to take our digital literacy, to heart, and do the work and want to know what's true. I hope this presentation has helped you become more informed and aware of the fact-checking resources that are out there. And this is just some of the fact checker websites that have been mentioned. And you'll get an email with this, the whole presentation, including this, so you don't have to write these down right now. But we'll send out that email so that you can have access to all of these. And of course, our library has a lot of resources to help you out. Colloquially, a search of fake news can bring up a lot of resources. Dangerous Ideas, A Brief History of Censorship in the West, From the Ancients to Fake News, How to Lose the Information War, Fake News, Understanding Media Misinformation in the Digital Age. There's lots of resources to help you. And of course, we have in addition to books, we have a lot of learning resources. I know on LinkedIn Learning, there's a lot of videos there about how to suss out fake videos. Just interesting content, and you can access that through lacountylibrary.org/learn. And the ones I was looking at that were interesting were on LinkedIn, but I'm sure there's more on Gale courses as well. And of course, you can always talk to one of our reference librarians by phone, text, email, and we have an instant chat librarian. And you can access those resources with lacountylibrary.org/contact us. And just again, as was mentioned, this presentation was brought to you by LSTA grant. And we're going to go ahead and do our Q&A session. So go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And my room light has turned off. The timer woken back up.
Yeah, folks, please feel free to drop any questions you have into the Q&A box below. Connor, I had a question. You touched on this a little earlier, but what's the role of like social media platforms, in the spread of misinformation? You mentioned like being in a bubble. Do you have any tips on how to sort of escape? We're all, our own individual bubble and biases.
Yeah. You know what? When it comes to social media, there's a lot of being aware of the content that you viewed in the past is going to be used anywhere online really is going to be what the algorithms choose to push content to you on social media. So the ads that you see, the headlines that you see, everybody can follow their own friends or sources. So whatever you follow is going to be there's no changing that. But I try not to get really any news from social media. The way that I use social media is to keep up with friends and family, and that's it. I think there's a lot of convenience with using, say, like Facebook for it all, or if you feel passionately about certain subjects, you want to share that with your friends and family. But if if the echo chamber that you're in is all going to be the same leanings, all going to be the same information that's potentially inaccurate, it's just going to keep reinforcing those inaccuracies, and you might not even be aware of it. And that's the big danger of the bubble or the echo chamber that you find yourself in. So my recommendations would be to not use social media for news, or if you do, try subscribing to some people or some organizations that are opposite or have different views. Again, like it's just kind of the same as going to like the all sides and the fact checker, where you'll see different headlines. And usually when you're looking at different headlines, you can see, okay, like, well, this is the fact, or this is the boring, objective headline, so and so did this, or whatever the case may be. But the context, with which that's presented, that's where you're going to run into different biases. So I mean, I think we all, you know, when we think about it, come from a place where we want to know as many true things as possible. I know for me, I want to reject as many false claims as possible, because I want to be as informed as I can be. And so I think the curiosity to look beyond what you would normally look at can, be enough to pull you out of an echo chamber. And I think that that's really what it comes down to, is that, you are the master of your own online experience. What you see is really what you're looking for. And if it's going to reinforce what you already believe, make sure that what you believe is based on true and accurate facts. With the assumption that that's important to you. Because I think it's important, to most of us. We, nobody wants to live in a polarized world, or where only one side is presented. So step out of your comfort zone, go to, the other side once in a while, or if you can't stand that, start with the all sides or the fact checker. And I think that would be the best way to combat what you're seeing online, and knowing that what you're seeing is accurate. I'm going to have more faith in what I say and what I believe, if I'm doing my fact checking and saying like, okay, yes, I feel pretty confident, that this is the way that things are, no matter what, the social media slant may be.
Great, thank you. Another question. What are some of the biggest sources of misinformation out there, would you say?
Yeah, I think we talked about the big ones, the social media, and that's, just because so many, social media is so popular, and it's so easy to use it as your, one-stop experience, online. And all your friends, are there, and all your friends are sharing news, and your friends aren't, going to be sharing, deliberately, misleading claims, you think, or you hope. But yeah, so social media, I think, is a big issue right now. But really going anywhere online, you want to look for, the credible organizations, the legitimate news sources, that have been around, and can cite their sources. And if you are doing your due diligence, you can discard the websites that maybe you'd been using in the past, or be okay, well, let me take that with a grain of salt until I can verify, or it's just, I think it's human nature to want to double down on what we already believe. And I'm not coming from from some above it all. I'm just as susceptible to misinformation as everybody else. But again, I think the internal desire to want to know what's accurate is what's going to mainly drive us. And knowing that video or that image that you see is not just a Photoshop hoax, or an AI, an AI driven media, where we can go and do a text prompt for an image, or even a video, and have really anything that we want, come up. These technologies are getting better and better, and they're able to fool us. So that's why digital literacy and these kinds of programs are so important, to even be aware of the kind of um, the kind of content that is able to be faked. It's a different world out there than picking up a print newspaper. Digital manipulation is just it's now part of our world. So we just have to be aware of it.
Yeah, some advice I remember hearing was like beware of like strong emotional response to the headlines you see. So if you feel fear or anger or outrage at a news article, just instantaneously, often it advises you to sort of step back and think about what you read and ask yourself if the information is actually true, because as humans, we're all wired to respond to danger, to out in the environment, right? Respond to things that feel like threats. So those kind of headlines and news stories tend to go viral because we start sharing it because we're
Sure.
concerned and we want to share it with our friends and family too. But
yeah,
that's one way.
I mean, people with propaganda, we saw that as an example, and they prey on internal biases or confusion or the outrage machine. That emotional response, those are purposeful psychological tactics. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary thinking about how our own minds are trying to be used against us. The tactics. That's why you really have to what is the actual facts conveyed in this article, or this piece of media. Is it trying to give me information that's useful or helpful, or is it preying on my outrage about certain things? It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal right now.
Yeah, one of our attendees, shared the example of War of the Worlds on the radio. That was another example of a story that went viral very early on, right?
Yeah,
On a new media format.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah, I mean, here we are talking about online and the internet changing things. I mean, radio changed things. TV, obviously, moving pictures, with every progression that we make, the disinformation and the misinformation is going to be a part of the human culture and experience. But combating that, I think, can only make everyone stronger, together in the way that this is the human condition. Not to get all philosophical, but I personally, I'm very interested in this topic, so I'm pretty passionate about it.
Now, another question. You touched a little bit about the recent rise of AI. Do these sites use AI generated news articles and headlines now? Like, is that happening currently?
AI
Like
generated content. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And again, sometimes that it just might seem innocent, harmless fun, like the example of the Pope wearing the puffy white jacket. That was I saw that image. It is an AI generated image. I just saw it and I thought, oh, that's a interesting attire. And I was like, well, let's look more into that. And yeah, it wasn't a real photo, but it's absolutely being used now. And the fact that unless you are really technologically savvy with Photoshop and the kind of video and image editing software, it can be really hard to spot, which is just why these tools that we have at our disposal are so useful and so helpful, because that's the best way to combat, what we don't know that we don't know. But yes, AI is definitely out there, putting out falsehoods that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, folks, feel free to add any other additional questions you have into the Q&A box. If not, I think we're coming towards the end of the program, Connor.
Sure.
Okay. Well, as Connor mentioned, a link to the recording of this presentation and the slides will be emailed to you next week. So again, please don't worry if you feel like you missed anything or missed the first parts of it. And okay. And sorry, Connor, again for the digital interruption earlier on.
Oh, no problem.
That all happens.
It wasn't unprecedented because I did have a program freeze before, so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if it's frozen, let me stop and pick it up. So yeah, no worries.
Okay. Oh yeah, we have one last question, and this is a challenging one, right? Can we 100% trust, the major news sources, CNN, Fox, Google News, Yahoo News? That's a subjective question, but do you have any remarks on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like absolutist statements to begin with. So 100% trusting anything is, I'm already on the no. That just because something, it comes from like one of the big organizations isn't going to necessarily mean that it's accurate. That's why comparing, to other sources is going to be, your best bet. Like, okay, well, this organization is, popular and generally considered legitimate. Now, are the other sources saying the same thing? Or if the nugget of the article or the information is accurate, how is the context changing that? Or what is the push or the leaning in this article, versus an article on the same topic from a different one of the big legitimate news organizations. I mean, it really takes again, self motivation to look and decide for yourself what seems accurate, but just trusting anything 100%, is never going to be a good rule of thumb. Even with some of the examples we saw today, the Onion, satirical newspapers, and other headlines have had to be retracted. I mean, that's part of they've been fooled, thinking that the Onion headline was correct, or that I think there's a saying, eating the onion or something, because the Onion, is such a mainstay nowadays in satirical online content, that when you read an Onion article and you believe it, there's a phrase to say that, and they make their headlines meant to look accurate. So yes, mainstream sources can be fooled. They have in the past, and they will continue to be fooled. You have to look at, did they then retract it? Did they try to make the error correct? Did they did they follow up and talk about how it was incorrect, or is that falsehood just still sitting online on their website for anybody to look at? I mean, most people, once they read an article, they're not going to think or want to go back to look for retractions. So it takes it's a lot of effort. We're all inundated with so many things pressing for our attention, that, trying to fact check even simple stories and headlines can kind of feel overwhelming. And I just, I want you to know that, you have the tools, even way beyond, what we are able to talk about today. There's so many resources out there to um, try and help you determine what's true or not. Use them, seek them out. Try not to get all your information from the same one or two sources. I usually, first thing in the morning, I'll be like, okay, what's going on in the world? And I'll just go to Google News, because the way it's laid out, there's all kinds of headlines from different sources that are there. And so I can kind of see the slants, and I can click on each one and be okay, well, it looks like this quote, is accurate. This person was quoted the same in these few articles. I might want to, be less, I might want to try to care less about what the articles surrounding the quotes, are. There's just, I want to look for the accuracies or the inaccuracies within, and someone else's opinion. Even if it's a reputable journalist, there's going to be biases. Nobody's 100% objective 100% of the time. So I want to reduce the biases in what I read. And the only really way to do that is to try and look more into it yourself and use the tools that we have. And being aware that that these biases exist, and that there are bad faith actors that are purposefully putting out disinformation, and that's not even touching on all the unintentional spread of misinformation, thinking something is legitimate and passing it along. But I would just say again, if before you share an article, or you see something on social media and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to let all my friends be aware of this, like Stephen was saying earlier, stop and ask yourself, is this article trying to promote radicalism, outrage? Is it just a talking point of all my preconceived notions about an idea? Before you share an article, stop. If you're doing it out of outrage or indignation, think about why this article was published. What are the what we went over in the program today? What are the motives behind who wrote it? What is the organization? Does it seem accurate, or is it just kind of full of opinions masquerading as facts? These are the things to ask yourself. And if it's just an emotional response, maybe don't share it. Maybe do some more digging, or if you're not sure if it's true information, or if it sounds just so outlandish, don't be the next chain in the spread of that misinformation. You can't control anybody else or what they post, but try not to spread it yourself. And that's again why my biggest recommendation would be to not get my news sources or my worldviews from social media, because there's just so many different agendas being preyed upon, using the psychological tactics and the algorithms, pushing certain content to your feed. Just be aware of how our own, and again, I'm including myself in all this, how our own biases affect the content that we purposefully seek out, and that we come across passively, because the technology to know what gets us to click and look and read and view. That's the crux behind the what I mentioned earlier, the Cambridge Analytica scandal from a few years back. And that was it was a consulting firm that was used to look at Facebook profiles and try to categorize potential voters and push certain views. So there's already, it's already being used, against the common person. We just have to be really aware that, there are people out there that are trying to drive us towards certain things or certain feelings or outrage. That's not healthy for me to constantly be outraged, and I don't think it's healthy for most people. I want to know what's true and what's going on, and try to keep my mental sanity in check as best I can. It's a scary world out there. There's so many things vying for attention. Let's try to keep our attention on the things that are accurate and true and helpful.
Thank you, Connor. That's a perfect segue to our next presentation next week on how to avoid online scams, which often uses those feelings and reactions to really take advantage of you in serious ways.
Yeah.
So that'll be next Thursday at 11 a.m. Same time as today. So yeah, again, Connor, thank you for a great presentation. We had some great feedback and participation, and I definitely learned a lot, so I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen.